Hi, my name's Nick Broughton and I'm Randomfish. Hit the subscribe button and let's all be Randomfishes together, shall we? So, I've been thinking about what to review and I decided to look at a game instead. Simply because, to me anyway, I haven't done a good game in a while. If you look further down into my channel, I did the Discworld games and I talked about some of the Sorcerer. And there are some games in this world that I feel a connection to because of the properties that they're connected with. Now, my brother also does reviews online, but he does his mostly on games. If you don't know him, check out Hardcore Pornography. The link will be in the description below. And he looks at a lot of games and reviews them and talks about them in their various formats. And I was thinking about the games that I remember growing up with when I was younger. They were a lot like his. Doom, again, some of the Sorcerer, Discworld, Monkey Island, those games. I grew up with a lot of point clicks. Not very much platform-based adventures until it got a bit further into it. I remember being a big fan of this random egg hunting game that you had to find. I can't remember what it was called, but it was weird. But there was a game that I remember absolutely adoring, and it wasn't on the first console I ever owned, but it was one of the first modern consoles I ever owned. Get set for this, kids. Way back when I owned a PS1. A proper PS1, not this newfangled mini thing that they seem to have brought out. Way back in the year of 2000 and the year of 2002, they released two Spider-Man games on PS1, Spiderman and Spiderman 2 Enter Electro. These two games are not what got me into Spider-Man, but they were these great staples of Spider-Man. To bring it up to context, here it is. My first real exposure to Spider-Man was in the 1990s animated series that was released. If you don't know what that is, find links. There's clips of it on YouTube. There's a whole bunch of stuff all over the place. It's a lot of fun. It's very interesting. It's a very cool series, and it bounced itself off of the X-Men series. Now, I did not see the X-Men animated series for many years, and this was because I just didn't have access to it. I didn't know that it existed. All I knew was about the Spider-Man cartoon. And as I got more and more into Spider-Man, I wanted to look more into it. And the comics were very complex, something I didn't really think about getting into, mainly because of my brain just couldn't comprehend certain aspects of it. And I thought if I watched it through an animated filter or watched it through a film type filter, then it would be less jarring for me. I ended up, through various forms, not reading a lot of Spider-Man comics, not reading a lot of comics actually in general, until I was a little bit older. But a lot of my exposure to Spider-Man came in the form of those games. And when I first played them, they were incredible games. Now, to give you something of an idea here, the game of Spider-Man involves our favourite wall-crawling hero. See, here he is. I have him in Lego form to help me out here. Occasionally, I'm going to get close enough so I can do this. He runs across at the top of the building, and then he jumps and he web swings. Now, this was a game that knew how to defy the laws of physics to the best of its ability, because you could not survive a fall off the top of a building, yet you could somehow web swing through the air. Figure that out. Because I sure as shit don't. I had no idea. Not a clue. But the graphics were... they were a bit like some of the Sorcerer 3D. Very, not blocky, but felt very block-esque. The hands didn't really seem to be hands. They appeared to be these blocks. Possibly this constant, kung fu style hi-ya look that they had going on for them. And this is all stuff I didn't think about when I first played the game, because you don't think about these things when you first play the game. But looking at them now, as an adult, yeah, not particularly good overall graphics. Primarily because the mouths never moved when they spoke. Um, Even if the characters had mouths. The reason why this is, and I know why this is because Spider-Man wears a mask. You never have to see his face in 1,000,001 years. I also don't think they were quite fully... I don't know if they necessarily were capable of making mouths that moved at that point in terms of in sync with the audio. This would be a problem for a lot of games. I mean, I can remember A Bug's Life, the game back on the PC. I know it came out in PlayStation 1 as well, but I only had a miniaturized copy on PC that I never completed because I couldn't get through it without dying constantly. It was annoying. But the graphics did this thing. Activision is a great company. They're a great gaming company to have in there, don't get me wrong, but I mean, I don't know, I've forgotten who else it is that was responsible for that, but a lot of them, I don't think the mouth moving thing in games was a big thing at the time, so I think they were grateful having Spider-Man be their main protagonist in the game, because he can't really talk. But in terms of that, in terms of the graphics, it's all beautifully done, it's all very well executed, and I will say that. But on to the plot of the game, as it were, because this is what actually got me. This is what got me actually addicted to the game. The plot is that someone steals a device from a recently reformed Otto Octavius. Now, for those of you who don't know, if you don't, then why the hell are you watching this video? Otto Octavius is Doc Ock, one of Spidey's main villains within his rogues gallery, if you will. Someone steals his device and it's revealed to be Spider-Man, which is weird because you see Peter Parker in the crowd taking photos. So it's clearly an imposter Spider-Man, or either that or his conscience has been split and there's now a Peter Parker and a Spider-Man, which I severely doubt, because I think that would almost be like switching, separating Bruce Banner from the Incredible Hulk. It's not a good idea, especially if there's anything Hulk versus Thor taught us. But we then get Spidey trying to stop himself from being arrested because obviously he's innocent of this crime. And he's trying to figure out who it was that actually stole it, who the fake Spider-Man was, who sent them, because it might be that they did it on their own, but it's highly doubtful. Along the way, you run into various supervillains up to and including the likes of the Rhino, the Scorpion. You run into Carnage eventually, or Venom. You run into Venom first and then Carnage later. Because you run into Venom, of course. Venom, Eddie Brock is at the event as well. And when it's supposed that Spider-Man stole the device, Eddie becomes Venom in a vague attempt to sort of catch Spider-Man because, Spidey committed a crime. Venom therefore thinks that, because he never saw Peter, he therefore thinks that it actually was Spider-Man that committed the crime. And you get this whole thing where you're stuck in the Lizard's lair, but Venom has taken it over, so he can destroy Spidey. And while he does that, he's captured Mary Jane, who in the game is Peter Parker's wife. Not his girlfriend, not just his love interest, his wife. So yeah, I mean, I always kind of took that to be this way, not of ending the series, but of a way of sort of creating this continuity nod, i.e. sort of going, yes, they do get together, they do get married at some point. Obviously, comics has since then spat all over that concept, but comics spit over every relationship that any superhero has. It's kind of their forte at this point, no matter what company you're with. Eventually, they go and they find out about these symbiotes that are floating around, these unhosted symbiotes who are trying to find hosts within New York, which, since the device being destroyed, the whole city has been filled up with this gas. That's why you can't get off the roof of the buildings. You're always on roofs of buildings, or you're in a building. Bizarrely enough, the gas doesn't come through windows or through little cracks into buildings at all. The whole thing is just... It's a complete rant. I love the complete lack of worry of the gas entering buildings in this game, because you find yourself, at one point you break through the window of the Daily Bugle. That wouldn't be enough to send the gas floating into the Daily Bugle. Does it happen? No. It's just genius to me. I love that concept. You eventually find out who the fake Spider-Man is, and spoilers! Yeah, I just copied Chester A. Bum there. Spoilers! They end up doing this whole thing with the fake Spider-Man being Mysterio. And he's part of the boss fight and all this sort of thing. And then Spidey sort of says, who's really behind this? I know you didn't orchestrate this whole thing. What's going on with the symbiotes? What's with the gas? Why steal the technology? Blah, blah, blah. All this crap. And, Mysterio sort of says, you'll never find out, and they'll destroy you even if you do find out. All the traditional villain crap that you do. And he ends up tracking them down to he gets Mysterio to talk, and he gets them at a warehouse. You run briefly into the Punisher for a random point in the game, although you never fight him, which I would have loved to have done in the game, actually. I would have loved to have fought against the Punisher. That would have been fun to me. You don't even play as the Punisher in the game, which is really disappointing. You go into a warehouse, you then discover an underwater lair, which leads to possibly my best Spider-Man reaction of all time, where he runs through a door in this underwater thing. He runs into this room, and the camera for the game pans very slowly around, and you see everything that's going on as he's describing it. Not quite as he's describing it, but close. He runs into a room and he goes, "You've got to be kidding me." And then as the camera turns, okay, recap. A couple of 100 feet underwater, electrified flaws in walls, and deadly turrets pointing straight at me. Oh, my day just keeps getting better and better. Yes. Love it. Love that energy. Love Spider-Man. Yes. I like this. It's fun. You then having to get him through this section and all that until you get to the final bosses of the game, who are, I've already told you one of them, which is very annoying. I shouldn't have done that, but I've done it. It's fine. One of them is Carnage. The other one is Doc Ock, who, of course, hasn't really reformed, as we all know, because villains don't reform, blah, blah, blah. Spidey villains, comic book villains in general, they don't tend to reform unless one of them's Venom. And even then, it's kind of debatable. But you end up with possibly the coolest thing ever, and I don't believe they've ever done this in the comics. If they have, please correct me below. But they had Carnage symbiote leave its usual host, Cletus Cassidy, and attaches itself to Ock and saves him, or protects him at least, from the giant exploding lab that you have now caused as Spider-Man. And it's monstrous. It's like, it's almost like a pig nose. Like, the nose is up here, everything's pointing out, and it's weird. It's just weird. But it's so cool because he shrieks and he's chasing you as you run away through this exploding lab. It's, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, I have to run away. Web up, crawl, run down, all that sort of thing. And this giant Carnage Ock thing is following you, screaming like, and all that. It's really cool. And the game, in terms of the game and the plot, and in terms of the character bases and everything else, it's a lot of fun. It's very reminiscent of the animated series. It's also very reminiscent of the comics, obviously. It's got Stan Lee's voice in it, which I don't know if it instantly makes it good, but it makes it a little fun to sort of suddenly hear at the start of the game just this random person suddenly go, "Greetings, true believers." It's, yes, I can't do a Stan Lee impression, leave me alone. But it's so much fun to watch, and it's a lot of fun to play. Now, moving on to the second game, Spider-Man 2 Enter Electro, you then have Electro as the main villain. He's trying to put together this device that will make him a god. Now, in terms of the gameplay, it's upped a little bit to the point where you actually have webs in his underarms, in his costume, which is weird, but I kind of didn't care, because as far as I was concerned anyway, I thought, oh, that's just a cool new look for the costume in the game. That's fine. I have nothing against this. You then, of course, still have to fight through various villains in order to stop Electro at the end. And in one of those, actually, some of those villains include Shocker. You end up battling against Hammerhead at one point. You battle against Sandman. And obviously Electro as well. There's probably a few that I'm missing out. If I am, I do apologise, but that's sort of how this goes for me. But I mean, the villains of Spider-Man 2 didn't hold up for me as well as the first one, I guess. Not because I thought they were bad villains, but just because I think second games in general, or just this second game, I didn't play it as much as the first, because the first one was just so iconic to me. But there are a lot of cool concepts in both games, and like I said, the graphics are improved slightly, but not by much. You still don't see their mouths move when they talk. The whole thing is constantly talking to the house. It's not as effective. And you saw my mouth move because I was trying to say f, f. The F noise is very hard to say without lips. A, C, phlegm. Wow, I just quoted Jeff Dunham in a review. That can't be good. But why am I talking about these games? Why am I talking about these particular games? Because of two things. Number one, there is a good continuity nod for these games. Yes, they were made by the same company, so it's kind of obvious that they would have continuity, but at the same time, they were under no obligation to make this a continuity nod. None of that. At the end of the game, when Electro is in his cell and all the other villains are there as well at the end of the second game, they turn to another cell going, "Hey, you guys know how to play Go Fish?" And you see Doc Ock and all the other villains from the first game in the other cell, with Doc Ock doing the exact same thing he was doing at the end of the first game, which was banging his head against the cell door. Damn it, these are all morons. You know, it's a lot of fun to watch. It really is. Oh, it's kind of interesting and a lot of fun. Oh, one of the other characters you fight in the game is the Lizard. Although you don't really fight him as much as you're trying to like eject the cure to turn it back into Kirk Connors into him. Constantly trying to get the serum attached to him in some way, like trying to get into his system. So that's a lot of fun. But the other reason as to why I love this game so much is just the characters. Yes, the lines are incredibly cheesy and incredibly stupid, but they are so much fun. I mean, just the reactions from Spider-Man himself is a lot of fun in this. You get things like when Mysterio finally sort of gets revealed, he grows into a giant version of himself, you know, and does this whole line of going, "Now, little Spider, you will die." And Spidey just sort of looks like this. Is it too late for us to be friends? Like, hi, this is scary. So that's kind of cool. That was definitely cool to watch. Spider-Man's reactions are what make a Spider-Man game to me. I think that's where a lot of future games don't necessarily get it wrong, but I feel like it's what makes a good Spider-Man game to me. The best thing about Spider-Man's reactions actually is in the second game itself, when the credits start rolling, because he climbs up a building and they show off names and little animated forms of various producers, designers, art directors, all this sort of thing, across the various things. And he makes little comments about each of them as he climbs up the wall. And it's brilliant, because at one point, you know, there's a guy who is who broke a window or something, like breaks a window, or he's breaking a computer with a baseball bat, and Spider-Man just stops, and it would go right over a kid's head, but it's still so funny to hear in there just that line just going, "No debugger and no RAM make Dave go crazy." And that's it. Like, there's no context, nothing. Just that one line, and he crawls off to the next one. Like, there's lines in there, things like, hey, I know that guy. It's Spider Gap, or just stuff like, you move me, Jim. You really move me. And it's so weird, and yet it's so funny. And it's just brilliant to watch. And I do recommend that you go and play these games. I recommend that you find an old PlayStation 1 or just buy this mini. If it does work for that, I don't know if it necessarily does or doesn't, but a mini PS1, you can then put the Spider-Man game in there and you can play it, and it's so much fun. You can find them online so well. I recommend this to all the people out there who are fans of a chatty, quippy Spider-Man that do very, very silly things. And it's just a lot of fun to watch. It really is. So I do recommend it. And I recommend all the games. I recommend both of those games. Now, why am I talking about these games instead of any of the more modern Spider-Man games? Primarily because this was my starting point. Like I said at the beginning of the review, this was my starting point to Spider-Man. And while I may not always see the other games in the same light as that, I do love every game involving Spider-Man. And while that may seem silly, given the fact that Spider-Man 3, the game, is actually out there, I've never played that and I don't ever intend to. But that's an issue I have with the film, not so much what I have with the game. That's just personal crap. But, go on. Check him out, Spider fans. What else do you have to say about this, Spider-Man? Oh, that's right, he can't talk, he doesn't have a mouth, because he's wearing a mask. Enjoy yourselves, Random Fishers. Random Fish, out.